Good evening, everyone. I'm Administrative Law Judge Peter Allen from the California Public Utilities Commission. Thank you for coming out. Before I start, okay, who came to the hearing this afternoon? Okay, and then who came to the hearing I held here back in October? Okay, so we've got a fair amount of repeats, but I'm going to give my same introduction again, just for those who are not coming back. And you don't get like a stamp. There's no like free hearing after this. I do appreciate people coming out. This does give me a different perspective than what I get in my job, where I sit in my office reading, okay, Mr. Pack, who do I read stuff from? Yeah, the attorneys and economists too. So I like to hear the real concerns of real people. Not that accountants and attorneys are not real people. But I do get a different perspective when I come out to the community and hear the people who are doing things like living with, working at Diablo Canyon Power Plant. So I appreciate you coming out and being here and providing this input. There is a sign up. You can sign up to speak over at the table over here. What I want to do is I want to give priority to the people who have not had an opportunity to speak to me, or at the commission before. So if you are a party to the proceeding, you may speak, but I want you to go last because you've already had an opportunity to talk at me. If you spoke this afternoon, you can speak again, but again, going towards the end. To make sure we give everyone a chance to speak, there is a time limit of 3 minutes. There's a timer up here. I'm not going to cut you off, but if you could use that as a general guide when you run out of time, if you could wrap it up, that would be appreciated to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. When you're speaking, try to speak not too quickly and relatively clearly, because we do have a court reporter here who is taking it down, so there will be a transcript. This is the transcript from October, so that's available to me to look at and to our commissioners to look at. Commissioner Pickard regrets that he could not be here this time. I think mostly because he wanted to go to the farmer's market. And I have to admit, I was kind of tempted to just stay down there as well, but I figured other people would be showing up here and I should show up. So here I am. This is your chance to speak for me to hear from the community. So there are no presentations. There's no kind of question and answer session. This is for me to hear your concerns, your thoughts. So I will be just listening to people. If you have questions, we do have, if you have questions of pg&e or something about pg&e, we do have pg&e representatives here who, if you have questions for them, they may be able to answer them or help or refer you to someone who can. pg&e, can you raise your hand? There we have, and some in the back as well. So quite a few. If you have questions about PUC processes and how things work, we have representatives from the PUC's Public Advisor's Office. They're at the table over where the sign-in is, so feel free to ask them any questions. If you are going to have questions, conversations, if you could take it to the back or outside to not kind of disrupt the flow of the hearing, appreciate that. There is a microphone up here at the table, so when you come up to speak, if you can use the microphone, that helps people in the back of the room hear. With that, let me shift into my formal introduction of the hearing. This is the public participation hearing in application 16-08006, the application of Pacific Gas and Electric Company for approval of the retirement of Diablo Canyon Power Plant, implementation of the joint proposal, and recovery of associated costs through proposed rate-making mechanisms. I am Administrative Law Judge Peter Allen. We will start. The first speaker will be Jeff Armstrong. Second will be Scott Jalbert. Third will be Jeff Lee. Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Judge Allen. I'm Jeff Armstrong, president of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I'm here today to voice Cal Poly's support for the joint proposal to retire Diablo Canyon Power Plant while ensuring proper planning and care be taken for the employees of the plant and the surrounding community. As a California State University with a statewide focus, we believe that the content of the joint proposal represents this region's best effort to retain qualified talent, ensuring the safety and security of Diablo Canyon, and representing the ideal plan to retire the facility at the expiration of the current license. This is important for our region, but more importantly, for our state. Cal Poly is committed to continuing engagement with our partners in the Central Coast community, working closely with pg&e as well as other businesses, government, and educational institutions to assist in upskilling the workforce necessary to the decommissioning process. As we explained in the October 2016 California Public Utilities Commission hearing, our belief is that future plans for the land and facility uses at Diablo should not be limited to replacing the 1,500 jobs that will be lost. Rather, our hope and intent is to focus on building long-term strategies that will bring thousands of new jobs to our region in emerging fields such as technology, innovation, cybersecurity, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. And we strongly favor an approach that involves repurposing and reusing the facility. We believe Cal Poly's pipeline of talented students and accomplished alumni, combined with our community's assets, climate, and natural beauty, are valuable resources that will provide a tremendous benefit in furthering our community's long-term economic growth goals. Indeed, Cal Poly continues to be actively engaged in efforts to meaningfully stimulate economic growth. We're in phase 2 of the Tech Park expansion. The SLO hothouse continues to thrive. The Cybersecurity Training Center and the Central Coast Cyber Forensics Lab have been established. Conversations are taking place with key external partners to an extent that surpasses the university's historic involvement in local and regional economic development. Recognizing both the challenges and exciting opportunities ahead of us, Cal Poly is continuing constructive and collaborative conversations with our community partners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thank you, Scott Jalbert, followed by Jeff Lee and Michael Benton. And probably if you stand closer to the table, you're less likely to get feedback from there.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Scott Jalbert, and I proudly serve as the County and State Fire Chief for San Luis Obispo County. I also serve as the Operational Area Fire Coordinator for the State Office of Emergency Services, responsible for the regional coordination of fire resources in the event of a disaster or a large-scale emergency. With 30 years in the fire service and 13 years serving on that Type 1 incident management team, I've seen firsthand how important emergency planning and response is when needed, and how easy it is to ignore when everything is just fine. My main focus is about long-term support once the plant closes and Diablo Fire Station is gone. This closure will require more staff time from our department to provide emergency planning and a more comprehensive response in the event of an emergency. This joint proposal will ensure that this is done, in turn providing that the public is safe. Spent nuclear fuels are hazardous materials that your typical firefighter is not trained or equipped to handle. Some of the funding proposed in the settlement agreement is expected to go towards training staff in our local hazardous materials team to deal with the unique challenges presented by long-term storage of these radioactive materials. At the end of the day, I would like to make sure that there's an orderly and properly funded transition that will provide long-term solutions towards the safety of our first responders and the public. Thank you.
Jeff Lee, followed by Michael Banton and Milton Kerrigan.
Good evening, Judge. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeff Lee. I'm a member of the Grover Beach City Council. I'm here this evening to correct potentially misstatements from earlier today, or confusing statements from earlier today, where it may have been referenced that the city of Grover Beach may want to reconsider becoming a member of the coalition of cities. We do not intend to do that. We have nothing agendized to do that. However, we do look forward to the regional participation study-wise and in those discussions with all the members of San Luis Obispo County as well as northern Santa Barbara County. So we look forward to having those conversations and ensuring a safe transition as well as ensuring the transition for employees as well as a safe closure of the plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Banton, followed by Milton Kerrigan and Mary Matakovich.
Hi, my name is Michael Banton. I live up in Templeton, California. I'm here tonight as a ratepayer who pays utility bills. I should also let you know that I am employed by pg&e, but I do not represent them tonight. I'm here to present you a question, one that I would hope you would think about as you consider ruling on the proposal. And that question is, how does someone on the receiving end of a utility bill benefit from Diablo Canyon's closure? As you think about that, I'd also like to tell you how I see this proposal as a ratepayer. It looks like the ratepayer has to pay pg&e to shut down Diablo. Then, in the process, the ratepayer is denied the benefit of an asset that is viable well past its original anticipated life. Then the ratepayer has to pay for replacement power production that, although nice, is more expensive than what it's replacing, all for a net benefit of zero to the environment in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And lastly, although it's nice that this proposal mitigates the damage that's done to the surrounding community, I can't help but look at this and see that it looks like a legal bribe to get them to not fight the proposal. It was even named the joint proposal to give a false sense of agreement where no such consensus exists. And if a natural gas generator anywhere on the grid at any time has to pick up more load due to Diablo Canyon's closure, then this whole thing is a failure. I would recommend that you do not allow Diablo Canyon to shut down until there is a benefit to the ratepayers. Renewables are nice, and I encourage their use. However, solar does not heat your home on a cold winter night. Thank you.
Thank you. Milton Kerrigan, Mary Matakovich, Michael Lopez.
Evening. My name is Milton Kerrigan. I live here in San Luis, 15 miles from the plant. I've been reading quite a bit about the fact that utilities, including pg&e and regulators, are seeing renewable energy and energy storage as an asset and abandoning riskier energy sources, including nuclear energy. Mega utilities are now investing in renewables with the promise of high rates of return. For example, Duke Energy abandoned the Lee nuclear station a few years after the suspension of the Levy nuclear plant in Florida. What came next wasn't another nuclear plant, but a proposal to build 700 megawatts of solar energy installations, 50 megawatts of energy storage, and 500 EV chargers as part of a $6 billion plan to upgrade the grid in Florida. PG&E is following this trend in its profit-driven decision to close the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, acknowledging the economic advantage of renewable energy over that produced by the plant's two aging reactors. There are other significant advantages that could be realized by closing the plant even sooner than scheduled, say 4 or 5 years. Cessation of damage to marine life from the continued warming of Diablo Bay, as one. Generation of less radioactive water, and lowering the risk of radiation release from an accident, equipment failure, or a terrorist attack. I'm most concerned about the risk of radiation release before the shutdown, given the glaring inadequacy of our county's emergency preparedness for such an event. For example, evacuations planned for our few highways simply aren't workable. Also, training on sheltering in place isn't being offered or planned for county residents who aren't able to evacuate. Denial of risk and resistance to more realistic emergency plans subject county residents, such as myself and others, to even greater hazards as Diablo Canyon is preparing to shut down, a risky stage, as other nuclear plants in the country being decommissioned have saved funds by deferring replacement of failing components. My concern about inadequate emergency preparedness is detailed in a letter to the editor of the New Times, published last Thursday, which I entitled A Warning from Houston, and I will give this to be included in the record. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mary Matakovich, Michael Lopez, and Simone Malboof.
Good evening, Judge. My name is Mary Matakovich, and I'm the president of the Port San Luis Harbor District Board of Commissioners. The Harbor District is a special district governed by 5 elected commissioners. The district is located in Diablo Beach and is comprised of approximately 100 acres of land and 8,400 acres of tidelands. The Diablo nuclear power plant is our next door neighbor, and I'd like to say a good welcome. We are here today to be sure that our concerns and issues are included in the official record for these meetings and that we are considered in the final decision on the Diablo nuclear power plant joint proposal. These comments were developed by our harbor manager, Andrea Luker, who is unable to attend this meeting, but I'd like to present them for you. First, the Harbor District currently receives approximately $446,000 of unitary tax revenue from the Diablo nuclear power plant, and those funds are used for a variety of services for the Harbor District, which serves the county residents, visitors, and ocean users. These services include, but are not limited to, an armed harbor patrol, facilities maintenance, coastal access, and health and safety services. We understand that the County of San Luis Obispo will be receiving and overseeing the disbursement of the community mitigation funds. We want to ensure that the district continues to receive their fair share for as long as possible so that we may continue to maintain ourselves as whole. Secondly, pg&e currently provides an easement that allows thousands of visitors each year to access the Point San Luis Lighthouse. The lighthouse became the property of the Harbor District in 1993 with the acknowledgement that public access would be provided. We want to make sure that through the changes that are forthcoming with Diablo, that the accessibility of the lighthouse is preserved and possibly enhanced. Finally, the Harbor District is about to enter into a 50-year ground lease agreement for the development and operation of the Harbor Terrace project. This will provide the public access to RV and tent camping as well as other amenities. This regionally significant project is adjacent to the pg&e property and includes harbor uses, some of which are not coastal dependent. We hope to open the door to discussions with pg&e regarding the potential use of the pg&e property after the closure of Diablo for harbor uses, parking, and possible expansion of the Harbor Terrace project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Michael Lopez, Simone Malboof, Alex Romero.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Michael Lopez. I'm the business manager of Local 114, Plumbers and Pipefitters. We represent many workers in the South Coast area. I'm also the vice president of the Tri-County Building Trades, representing thousands of workers in the South Coast area. For my membership, Diablo has maintained a long history of good work with living wages, which are hard to come by these days. The working environment is unparalleled in their safety records. The demands of a highly trained workforce has always been paramount to Diablo as a partner to us in organized labor, especially in a job where safety is such a high priority. The closure of Diablo, the way we see it, is a devastating economic blow to the entire community, not just us. The simple truth is that to achieve the levels of GHG that we've been striving to achieve in our communities are simply impossible without embracing nuclear energy. Diablo has been a solid proposition from its beginning and will continue to be for our future. You simply cannot ignore away that reducing 23% of our energy production in one fell swoop is even possible to be achieved by the other alternative methodologies. It's a nice idea, it just simply isn't going to happen. Thank you for your time, appreciate it. Thank you.
Simone Melvin, Alex Romero, Brooke Burnham.
Hello, Simone Melvin from Los Osos. I live about 5 miles away from Diablo Canyon. As the crow flies, I have many concerns about keeping Diablo Canyon open until 24-25. Tonight I will speak about some information from the Bloomberg News and New York Times reported July the 6th that Russian and other hackers are among the suspects responsible for recent cyber probing of U.S. energy facilities. Since then, the vulnerability of the electric grid itself that initially provides 100% of all electrical power to those same safety systems is no longer just a theoretical concern. The electric grid itself has now become a cyber target, potentially for broader military operations or punitive measures in retaliation for U.S. actions. Nuclear power plants are designed to respond to the loss of off-site power from the grid with the automatic startup of emergency power systems such as generators, diesel generators. However, prolonged or recurring off-site power outages can challenge the durability and reliability of those emergency power systems. Moreover, mock security training exercises for defending a nuclear power plant from an armed assault begins first with knocking out their electrical grid. Without off-site power, the backup emergency power systems become part of an on-site target set for sabotage to cause a nuclear meltdown with widespread radioactive consequences. The U.S. International Cybersecurity Subcommittee has initiated an investigation, sending letters to the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and the NRC, asking how is the U.S. defending its nuclear power plants from foreign cyber attack. The New York Times reported that hackers appear to be determined to map out computer networks for future attacks. The Department of Homeland Security has called cyber attacks on critical infrastructures one of the most serious national security challenges that we must confront. On May 11th, the President signed an executive order to strengthen cybersecurity defenses of federal networks and critical infrastructures such as nuclear power plants, specifically addressing electrical disruptions and prolonged power outages resulting from cybersecurity incidences. So given all this information, in addition to Diablo Canyon's proximity to Vandenberg Air Force Base and other probable cyber target, I urge you to ask the question, how will we know if and when Diablo Canyon has had its computer systems hacked? And what is the plan for keeping Diablo Canyon safe from all hackers? If you haven't seen the video clip of Dr. Bud Nitz from Diablo Canyon Independent Safety Committee giving his opinion on why pg&e will not be able to guarantee the safety of Diablo Canyon the closer it gets to their projected closing dates, I invite you to research this tonight. Definitely do this before you vote on when to close Diablo Canyon. I believe this is yet another good reason for closing Diablo as soon as possible, and we would like to get a decision sooner than later for this community to be able to start planning in earnest. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
Alex Romero, Brooke Burnham, Alex Carlin.
Hi, my name is Alex Romero, and I'm a student here at San Luis Obispo High School. And I would like to shed some light on the fact that not only are CO2 emissions causing our global warming and our ecosystems temperatures to rise, but the 2.5 billion gallons of water that is dispensed every day, that's 20 degrees warmer than the natural temperature, and that's causing our kelp, algae, and small fish to die, which are all on the base of our food chain, causing everything that are larger mammals in our marine life to struggle and their growth population to decrease. And also that the desalination plant is causing almost 1.5 billion larvae fish to die each year. Thank you.
Brooke Burnham, Alex Carlin, Joan Carter.
Hello, my name is Brooke Burnham. I am Vice President of Marketing for Visits Locale, the countywide tourism marketing office. We're here to express our support for the joint proposal. Diablo is going to ongoing maintenance and biannual outages bring hundreds of pg&e employees, as well as contractors to the county each year, staying in our hotels, motels, and short-term lodging rentals. With Diablo's closure, our small businesses will lose thousands of lodging room nights, restaurant meals, activity bookings, and retail sales in fuel, groceries, and other areas. And our governments will lose the tax revenues that they bring with them. This consistent visitor spending not only supports local tourism jobs and small businesses, but does so in a critical calendar period, the off-season, so to speak, when these business owners and their employees especially need it the most. There's been a lot of conversation lately in our communities about regionalism and a lot of research going on alongside those conversations. The joint proposal provides the necessary resources and space and time to collaboratively develop a strategy to offset the losses that the closure promises. By approving this proposal, you'll be supporting the long-term success of our community, our small businesses, and ultimately our workforce, friends, and neighbors. Thank you.
Alex Carlin, followed by Joan Carter and Joe Whitaker.
Good evening, Judge Allen. My name is Alex Carlin. I'm a pg&e ratepayer and a resident of San Luis Obispo. More pertinently, perhaps, I'm an attorney and a retired federal administrative law judge. Prior to retiring, I spent 11 years as a judge with the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission handling licensing cases, and I was the chair of the 3-judge board that undertook the renewal licensing litigation that occurred here in 2010 to 2015. I'm now retired. Prior to being at the NRC, I was with the British Nuclear Fuels Corporation, a nuclear industry cleanup company, and in that role, I spent a lot of time working with decommissioning of nuclear facilities. I have 3 points that I might want to make. First, I commend pg&e and the other parties for the joint proposal for the closure of Diablo Canyon. Due to economics, the U.S. nuclear power industry is in serious decline. During the last few years, over 10% of the nuclear fleet have announced that they are closing. This includes Oyster Creek, Indian Point, Vermont Yankee, which I was chair of the board on, Kewaunee, Crystal River, San Onofre, and Levy, which I was also the chair of the board on. Second point, I agree with the Office of Ratepayer Advocates that the employee retention program contained in the joint proposal is too generous. I have experience with employee retention programs both from my time at NRC and my time in the nuclear industry. Given the current status of the nuclear industry, there is no need to pay Diablo Canyon employees an additional $352 million in order to retain them for the 8 years in question. The industry is in serious decline. There's no need to give them a bonus of, on average, $300,000 per employee to retain them. In addition, the 8-year closure period in retention program is far too long, much longer than is normal in the nuclear industry. One solution would be for pg&e to close Diablo earlier, say by 2010. This would provide a significant reduction in retention costs. In short, I agree with ORA that Tier 1 of the proposed ERP, amounting to $191 million, is unnecessary and should not be allowed by the PUC. Third point, I believe Office of Ratepayer Advocates is also correct that the pg&e customers should not be required to pay the proposed Community Impacts Mitigation Program. As originally proposed, the program would pay about $50 million. Now it's grown to $75 million. Under the guise of orderly transition, virtually every local government within 50 miles is now clamoring for some of this money. I've seen this phenomenon at other nuclear communities. I suggest that, like other communities, we are now going to have to live without the goose that lays the golden egg. PG&E customers should not have to compensate them. I agree with the Office of Ratepayers advocates that if PG&E wants to pay this money, then they should pay for it out of the stockholders' funds, not out of the ratepayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Carter, followed by Joe Whitaker, followed by, I think it's Marilyn Whitaker.
My name is Joan Carter. I'm a private citizen. I've been here since the day Diablo opened, and what I plan to say tonight is just what he said. So up front, I want the plant closed in 5 fewer years. I join that group of people in San Luis who feel that way. And my concern is safety. The risk is radiation release, more radioactive waste, and other catastrophic risk as outlined by several of the speakers already tonight. And the plant is only closing for the profit motive. If it were economically feasible, it would be still staying open. We all know that. So it follows that all decisions from now on are about profit. Who to retain, what to fix, when it actually closes, and I would like safety to be on the table, not just profit. Thank you.
Joe Whitaker and Marilyn Whitaker.
I would like to just take a moment and provide somewhat of a different perspective about PG&E, and that is related to their considerable long-term philanthropic efforts benefiting the community. I have personal, almost a 10-year experience as the fundraiser for 2 different organizations. Slow Score, the local chapter of the National Small Business Counseling Service, and in the past couple of years, as a board member of the 5 Cities Diversity Coalition. I have consistently found these executives to have a great concern for the welfare of our community in all respects, and I am certain such considerable concern is also embedded in their proposal under consideration this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn Whitaker.
Your Honor, my name is Myra Lane Whitaker. I am with a small boutique hotel management company managing hotels in the Central Coast. And we've lived here for 12 years, and when we first signed our loan documents, we were made aware of 3 things. To the north of us was a nuclear plant, to the south of us was a petroleum plant, and in the middle was agriculture, which I didn't know fertilizer was a danger. So we were very open to listening to ideas, both pro and con, about all of these entities in our neighborhood. When I first heard about the or close the plant, I wondered why. And it seems to me that a lot of the reasons we're given are also the reasons now to keep it open. And it was very interesting to me to understand that in those days, the people opposed to the plant being open was the same as what's being said now, different points, but basically harming the climate, harming our environment, harming our community. We have benefited very well from the plant being open because of all the things that marketing person with the Visit SLO had to say, and we find them to be very good partners in our community. And we think that their closure, as Dr. Armstrong said, is a very compassionate one and a very generous one for the community. So I just wanted to have our voice mentioned as to supporting the joint program to close. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what I have signed up who are not already parties to the proceeding. Are there other people who are not parties to the proceeding who wish to speak? Okay, seeing that, we're going to move on to the people who have spoken before in one form or another. First up is Tom Frecci.
I'm the city manager of Paso Robles, so therefore one of the members of the coalition cities. I'm also a member of the team who worked with pg&e to develop the Economic Development Fund, and also a member of the EVC steering group that's working to shepherd the economic impact analysis and fiscal impact analysis strategic plan. I will not repeat things I know or assume you've already heard. During this process, there have been, for some of us, at least two epiphanies that I'd like to just note briefly. The first is that members of the expert teams we've interviewed to do the economic impact analysis have continually said this area has no idea of how severe the economic impacts of the closure of Diablo Canyon will be. As a result, we all love to believe we're self-sufficient, but when situations like this happen, we know we're not. And so we are very supportive of the financial support that community transition efforts that pg&e has agreed to will provide in terms of retaining skilled employees and providing economic transition. Those benefiting from an activity in general should be those who pay for it. It's an economic principle, we believe, so therefore we are supportive of the ratepayers paying for this effort. Second epiphany is that local government does not exactly have a stellar track record in assisting our communities provide meaningful and head-of-household jobs, especially when we as individual communities work at cross purposes with each other and work in isolation of the private sector. One of the things that I didn't expect that has already been very apparent and I expect will continue is this closure process has led us to work both as communities much better together and much better together between the public sector and the private sector. So for instance, the team that's shepherding the process for the economic impact analysis is a working group of public sector, not-for-profits, and private sector individuals who are working very well together. So that's not something I expected, but is a long-term benefit of this process that will result in a greater and quicker economic recovery from the closure.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's do, actually, I think I have another non-party, Kathy Oliver, and then we'll go to Jill Zanuck and Sherry Lewis.
Good evening, sir. My name is Kathy Oliver. I'm a local citizen, and I'm coming to ask you to consider the safety, the environmental, and the economic reasons to close it as soon as possible. I just can't find any justification for keeping public nuclear power coming when we have much, much cheaper power available. And every day that we risk our safety and that we kill marine life is one more day that shouldn't be happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Zanuck, Sherry Lewis, and then Jean Nelson.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Check to make sure that's on.
Is it on now? I'm Jill Zanuck. I live in Rio Grande. And in its decision to cease operation of the reactors at Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant in 2024 and 2025, PG&E has determined the facility is no longer economically viable. Because renewable carbon-free replacement energy will allegedly be available by 2019, I advocate for plant closure in 2019. Here's why. In addition to being costly, this plant is dangerous. It's old. It was designed in the 60s, built in the 70s and 80s, and didn't begin operation until 1984. The systems and components were old before it began operation. And with the date of closure approaching, any incentive for making costly repairs has vanished. Furthermore, this plant is located in a seismically active zone, ceaselessly posing significant and costly risks. Additionally, maintaining a secure workforce for the plant's remaining years of operation is uncertain and unlikely. As experienced personnel find employment elsewhere, risk at Diablo Canyon increases. Diablo Canyon is also dirty. It continues to generate toxic waste despite no disposal solution. While some may claim nuclear as a clean carbon-free energy source, I assert that the high-level radioactive waste is lethal and cannot be ignored nor ever labeled clean. 5 fewer years of operation would reduce the health and environmental risks and would benefit the ratepayers.
Thank you. Sherry Lewis, Gene Nelson, William Libby.
My name is Sherry Lewis. I would like to emphasize that we locals have benefited in many ways to have this energy company here. PG&E does seem to be good to its employees, and it does offer many benefits in taxes, support businesses and volunteers in this area. I am with San Luis Obispo Mothers for Peace, however, and we feel forced to focus on the dangers of nuclear power. In the first place, if nothing bad happens here, like an accident, then that's great. But in the second place, something bad will remain here for decades, centuries, and maybe even millennia: the highly radioactive nuclear waste. People who don't live in this area get the benefit of the electricity, but they don't bear the burden of the risk of a nuclear accident, or especially bear the real burden of the nuclear waste. I like the joint proposal, but please, if you help close Diablo earlier than 2024-25, then there will be much less waste for us locals to have to be aware of, be on top of, and make sure remains safe. Please try to get the plant closed earlier, quite a bit earlier than 2024.
Gene Nelson, William Libby, and Joseph Evora.
Good evening. Is it working? Hello? Hello? It's turned on. Oh.
Hello? Yes, okay, same problem left. All right, good evening. ALJ Allen. Gene Nelson will be reading from my prepared comments for the time allotted. Additional details are found in yesterday's archived interviews on KCBX-FM and KCOI TV 12. Thanks for scheduling this public participation hearing in San Luis Obispo today. I believe that we're at a historic crossroads regarding California energy policy. Will it be business as usual, meaning fossil fuel dominance, or are we going to embrace a zero carbon future? CGMP already filed comments supportive of a continuance of the reasonably priced alternative compliance for Diablo Canyon to construct artificial marine reefs to compensate for any alleged harm of once-through cooling, the current matter before the California State Water Resources Board. CGMP was one of the environmental groups strongly opposed to passage of either AB 726 or AB 813, and was pleased to note yesterday that those bills sponsored by Assemblyman Holden were withdrawn from consideration during this legislative session. We are concerned that those bills would facilitate the importation of Pacific Corp's dirty thermal power into California from their numerous coal-fired plants, which have about 6,000 megawatts of capacity, and there are 3,000 megawatts of natural gas-fired plants, by subsuming to a proposed regional load balancing authority the authority of the California Independent System Operator to bar such power. Thus, CGMP is in support of the provision in SB 100, which bars the importation of such dirty, thermally generated power into California. In summary, CGMP is requesting that CPUC deny PG&E's application A1608006. A much more thorough environmental review of PG&E's application to abandon Diablo Canyon under California's IRP process will likely arrive at the same conclusion that CGMP already has. Keep California's clean energy champion running for at least another 20 years to help power California and protect the Central Coast's economy and environment for another 2 decades. Thank you.
Thank you. William Glucky, Joseph Evora, and then John Hackdorn.
One, two, three. Thank you very much, Judge Allen. And I'm President of Californians for Green Nuclear Power. I got into this by studying nuclear power. I've heard a lot of things about the dangers, and I studied those too. And I found they just don't hold up. It's supposed to be a very dangerous form of energy, Yet here's a danger with no victims. Where are the dead bodies? We were told there'd be plenty of them when they built this plant. Now, this is very serious business. We are in a global warming epoch. The world is facing its worst threat ever from global warming. I don't know how many of you believe that or have a grasp for it. I urge you, please do some reading. Read one book. Read James Hansen's book, Storms of Our Grandchildren, or read James Lovelock's book. He's a top scientist. He's the guy that resolved the ozone crisis by identifying the gas that was causing it. These two scientists are the top of the top, one from England, one from America. They are pro-nuclear. They are very, very worried about global warming, and I've heard very little about that. Big business can put a fear into us about many things, and they've done it. Acid rain, they convince people it's not real, it doesn't happen. Smoking and cancer, that's my favorite. They played down that smoking caused cancer for 50 years and millions died. Now, big fossil fuel is injecting fear very successfully into people. And they've formed groups, and they're just determined to close all the carbon-free plants they can. I'm wondering what's going to happen when fusion comes along. They're going to have to get a new argument, but you can bet it'll come. Fusion is going to kill us. And you know, that will be taught to them in various ways. These big companies are very clever about the way they do this, and they have a lot of money, and they can influence our media. And you're hearing the echo of that tonight in some of these voices. Diablo Canyon is the strongest carbon-free electrical production we have in California by far, the strongest single one. Have they ever killed anybody? Never an accident, never a death. The U.S. Navy is fine. They're 100% nuclear now. Where's the deaths and destruction, folks? You fearful folks? All the sailors should be dead by now. So I'm asking the PUC to please ignore the fear factor and take the long-range view. Your responsibility, according to your mission, is the protection of the people, their health, their future, and you know, you're all we've got, sir, to save us from this shutting down of carbon-free power, this huge thing at Diablo Canyon. And I hope there's a lot more nuclear reactors because I'm scared of global warming, and global warming wants more fossil fuel. You know, it's doing fine with lots of fossil fuel. Thank you very much. My time's up. I appreciate it, Jeff.
Thank you, Joseph Iborra, followed by John Heckmore.
Good evening, Judge and all. I'm a retired pg&e employee, engineer for Diablo Canyon for 15 years, and I worked up in Washington and Power also. I think California should look at the way New York State has gone, where they actually give credit for emission-free electricity, for the reliability, for especially reliability. When they had the Arctic, the really hot cold wave, that was the only plant they had. When right now in Texas, South Texas, kept running no matter what the floods were. This plant, whenever we have a heat, very hot spell in California, the Cal ISO will ask them to stay running no matter what. And I think the state has really been unfair to Diablo Canyon. It's not a lot of need for the emission-free and for the reliability. It provides 21% of California's clean electricity. It provides 9 to 10% of California's total electricity. And I have a hard time believing that solar and wind can replace that. I don't want us to be replaced, Diablo Canyon, to be replaced by fossil fuel, especially natural gas, and that's probably what's going to happen. So I hope that we can see other solutions, or at least explore the solutions of New York and Pennsylvania. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John Hector.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm a professional engineer working for a fairly large power engineering corporation. We do nuclear, we do gas, we do coal, even though I personally don't as a conscientious objector to that. We also do transmission and renewables. So I have a fair amount of experience in working in various sites and various forms of power, and I want to say that I've never been worried going to work at a nuclear power plant, whereas if you walk into a coal power plant, it's dirty, it's nasty, it's dangerous by comparison, and gas plants are dangerous due to the pressures and the combustion. Regardless, I just wanted to say that it's very, very safe there, and I've gotten to know some of the engineers working out there in the year I've been out here, and I won't be here very much longer, but they're very safe and they're very, very focused on safety. And I just want to say, as a new father, I want to urge you not to close the plant unless you can ensure that A, prices won't rise, and B, more importantly, you won't be using any more coal or natural gas. Greenhouse gases are a very big problem, and not just because the global, the warming of the climate, but also the potential impact of instability in as population gets displaced due to global warming. That instability can cause the rise of unstable elements and religious fanaticism, terrorist organizations. You're already seeing some of that happen in Africa. I want to urge you not to subject our children to that. As a new father, that worries me, and yeah, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all of the speakers that we had signed up. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak this evening? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate the comments. And this public participation hearing is adjourned.